Today's microlearning is how to manage your emotions and stress in a turbulent world with Dr. Aisha Williams. In today's fast-paced and unpredictable work environment, managing our emotions is a crucial skill for success, not just in the workforce, but at home as well. According to the World Health Organization, workplace stress causes the global economy an estimated $1 trillion annually in lost productivity. I mean, you think about all of the articles and talks on burnout, and this has really become the next epidemic. So beyond the financial impact, these unchecked emotions can lead to burnout, strained relationships, and poor decision making. Studies have shown that 75% of employees believe that managing their emotions and stress effectively can lead to greater productivity and overall job satisfaction. And for leaders, the many leaders who join these calls that we have or watching on LinkedIn, we face immense pressure to maintain composure under stress. When I was an executive moving the corporate ladder, it was at an age and time I couldn't show emotions, especially as a woman. But you couldn't show emotions or you were deemed weak or too emotional. However, our emotional stress influences not just our mental health, but our performance as leaders. And it also impacts, and I think this is the most important, the people we lead, the cultures, and the morale of our teams. Research by Harvard Business Review reveals that emotionally intelligent leaders are 20% more likely to retain high-performing employees and foster collaborative work environments. So note to companies listening to this right now, emotional intelligence is important when you are hiring leaders. Get rid of the toxic leaders. Get rid of the a-holes that you have in management. You need to hire more people who have emotional intelligence because it impacts retention and it impacts the well-being and the cultures of your teams. So in a world where change is constant and challenges are inevitable, when you develop emotional resiliency, it impacts all aspects of your life. So managing emotions effectively not only improves your personal well-being, and I dare say your family and your friends, but it also enhances your leadership effectiveness. Leaders who master emotional regulation can navigate turbulent times, and I will say we are going through a very turbulent times right now with the election and everything else that's going on. But mastering emotional intelligence gives you more clarity. It helps you make better decisions, and it inspires confidence in your team. So when you're able to harness these emotional intelligence, I have to remind people that it is not a soft skill. I hate that term soft skill because it is probably one of the most powerful tools that you can have as a leader. It's a strategic advantage in today's dynamic workforce. And that is why I am so thrilled to have the incredible Dr. Aisha Williams today. Hello. Hi, Aisha. Aisha is an executive coach and a consultant with a passion for unlocking individual potential. She holds a BA from Yale and a PhD in clinical psychology for Fordham and completed a postdoctorate fellowship in NYU. She's conducted research on maternal stress and mindfulness. She's applied her insights on emotional regulation and resilience in her coaching. She has expertise in various therapeutic modalities, including mindfulness, CBT, hypnotherapy, and trauma treatment. She specializes in coaching high-achieving individuals to overcome personal and professional obstacles. Moreover, she is known for her compassionate, tailored approach that combines psychology with practical coaching strategy. Welcome to the stage, Dr. Aisha Williams. Hello, Aisha.
Hello. Lan, thank you so much for having me.
Well, I am so excited to have you. I would say I've interviewed dozens and dozens and dozens of people, you definitely have the most degrees. So let's kind of talk about about how do you manage your emotions and stress, especially in this time where this world is turbulent, but how can we use these insights to really unlock our full potential, right? By harnessing our emotions. You talk a lot about managing emotions and stress. When we last spoke, I think it was about a month ago, we were just talking about what we would talk about today. You said something so beautiful that I've never heard anyone else say. And one of the things you said was that negative emotions aren't something to be avoided because they are beautiful signposts. Can you talk about that, what you meant by that phrase, beautiful signpost? Because I loved it as soon as you said it.
One of the things that happens with people who are really high impact individuals is that they have a lot of moving parts. Their decisions impact a lot of people, and they're typically very high achieving. So they are navigating so many things. And so just the basic level of stress and distress, it can be just through the roof. One of the challenges with having such high stress and not having a lot of space in your life to manage it, and having to move very quickly, is that in order to function, often you have to kind of have a way to set aside the distress, to tuck it away, to avoid it, to distract yourself. Because to be honest, when you are feeling overwhelmed or angry or sad or ashamed or, any of the plethora of feelings that can come up with emotional distress, you can feel unraveled. You can be really unfocused. It's hard to solve problems. It's hard to navigate the day-to-day, or you can do things that you regret later. There is a real valid reason that people avoid distress and they kind of move away from it. And they have strategies for not meeting it directly. We'll probably talk about this later, but distress and stress impairs your cognitive functioning significantly. So there's real reasons why people look at negative emotionality and emotional tension, and they want to move forward and they want to skip over it.
I talk to so many executives, and the constant word I hear is stress, overwhelm, and burnout. So, what are some of the impacts of stress, and what can we do to mitigate it?
The one thing that really is shocking about stress is the dramatic impact it has on our life functioning in terms of our cognitive capacities. So just super basic things like your ability to take in information is significantly degraded. Your ability to solve problems, your creativity, your ability to learn. So all of these basic functions of your mind can be working at, a small fraction, 20, 30% of your capacity, your actual incredible skills and capacity. And one example of this, I think probably may be familiar to most people, is have you ever been in a situation where you were really upset at someone or something was really bothering you and you reacted in a certain way, and half an hour later you look back and you're like, what was I thinking? That didn't make any sense. Logically, it was clear that XYZ was true and I should have done ABC to handle it. And there's so many answers and there's such a better way of handling it. And it's as if you kind of lose yourself. So that is what's happening. It's not just something that's on an emotional level. Your ability is degraded to access all of your resources, your wisdom, your good thinking, all of the skills and experience that you have. And so the challenge with your cognitive skills being degraded is that when you're facing real challenges at work, at home, in other areas of your life, you need your full self to navigate this.
Yeah. I remember when we had spoken probably like a month ago, I had wrote in my notes a stat that blew my mind, that you had said that our cognitive abilities, or whatnot, is compromised by 80% when we're
Yeah.
stressed. And I was just shocked at that number. I was thinking, maybe 30, 40%, but 80%. And so I think about these company cultures that are like high stress, especially technology now, right? Where everything is kind of fast paced. And what's the importance of having like psychological safety, like in the work environment? Like, why is that important? And, you know, how can we do, because psychological safety in a lot of ways is kind of tied to emotional intelligence as well, right? Like, how can we develop more psychological safety for our teams? And how can leaders develop more emotional intelligence within themselves and maybe their groups as well?
Well, and I realized I didn't answer the second part of your question, is your previous question, how do you actually address the stress, and how do you meet these effectively to minimize them? So, and that's a big part of this answer. So the most basic way of dealing with this kind of stress is having experiences, having tools, having practices to reduce your stress. So one of the reasons that I was excited out of my clinical training and the research that I was interested in, like, working with people with PTSD, severe depression, people in the inpatient units, people with real trauma, that there are an extraordinary amount of practical tools that can help you within 3 to 5 minutes to get your stress level, if it's out of 10, down to a 2. I mean, I tell my clients that I'm working with, basically, if your distress emotionality level is above a 4 or 5, that's not a place you need to be making decisions. But when you think about it, like, how often are we at those high levels, right? So in order to function efficiently, you need to have real practical tools for getting your stress levels down. So there are, obviously very deep techniques such as EMDR, cognitive behavioral therapy. They're broad clinical tools that people use in therapy to address these issues. But what's interesting to me is you can take pieces of these tools and people can apply them and use them on their own, and they can practice them on a daily basis to kind of manage your everyday stress when it's at a 5 or 6. So you can practice getting it down to a level 2, or even a 0. One of the things that was really exciting to me about being in the coaching space is that in addition to using all of the traditional clinical tools, I get to use some less traditional things such as hypnosis, mindfulness, psychosensory interventions, just things that can be super rapid and can help you to feel better really quickly, but may not have the broad research base or use in settings with people with significant mental illness. So as a part of today, if we have the opportunity, Lan, I'm happy to show some of the tools, which I call sort of my power tools, that will just, take a couple minutes so people can check in with their levels of stress.
I would love that. And for those who are kind of just tuning in now, Aisha created this kind of new form of coaching called breakthrough coaching, which when Rodney, her husband, who I'm good friends with, was talking about what she was doing, it kind of blew my mind because, traditional, I got my undergraduate degree at Stanford in psychology. And so I'm kind of really familiar with the different types of modalities of like psychology, psychiatry. And most of the times those processes are a very long process. And what you did was you combined all of these different modalities into this breakthrough psychology kind of really being able to enable people to create massive change in a short period of time, right? I love that. So talk more about that, but also talk about what we can actually do. Of course, we can reach out to you and use your service, but what are some of the things that we could do just maybe on this call today or when we get home that would help with tackling some of this, like dealing with these strong emotional feelings that we might feel at work or even at home?
Sure. So, in terms of the breakthrough coaching, the reason I think, to be really honest and fair, the reason why I'm able to work like this. So in breakthrough coaching, you do long sessions, so 2 hours, 90 minutes. You're doing an intense sort of deep piece of work that requires a lot. It requires some psychological awareness. It requires psychological health, high motivation, and it's not easy work. So the people I work with are, we meet and I make sure people are healthy enough, capable enough, and have the capacity to sort of engage in this deep work, because therapy is a beautiful thing. Typically in therapy, when you have someone coming into your office, in a few sessions, even if you have not even begun to talk about it with a person, most good clinicians have a sense of what are their pain points, what are the tough parts, where they really need to work, a little bit about what it's coming from, and sort of what the path is. But in therapy, you kind of take a while to allow someone to walk through each step, to unfold naturally. And holding someone in that way is really beautiful and important. And if people are not suffering with a mental illness and they have these specific problems and they're willing to go there, you can actually identify pretty easily what are kind of the tough points in people's challenges and what are the emotional underpinnings. And if they're willing, you can do some of that deep work within 30, 40 minutes within a session to neutralize some of those emotions, to open them up so they can actually move past that stressor or that problem, or take forward steps in addressing that challenge. So that's sort of like the breakthrough coaching piece. And this is the part that I'm kind of excited about, introducing today, is maybe I can talk about some of the psychosensory techniques that are really useful in sort of decreasing your stress in the moment. Is this a good time for that, Lan?
I love it. Let's go for it.
So to give just a brief overview, by psychosensory techniques, what I mean is, you're using sort of your hands or your body, you're doing something physical to make changes in the brain, to sort of slow down the amygdala, to stimulate the vagus nerve, so that you are reducing distress and introducing and telling the brain that you're safe when you're focused on a particular problem or you're focused on a stress. And what that does is it helps down regulate you in the moment. And so just that experience of being at a level 5 or noticing some stress and noticing that you have the capacity to feel better can be profound and create a lot of freedom for people. So I would love to start today. If people can just take a second, if you're holding something, put it down, and close your eyes and just take a breath and just kind of do a just brief scan of your body and just kind of check in and notice how you're feeling in terms of your level of stress or distress. And one of the things that's helpful for this process and for this work is if you kind of notice, if you would think about if your stress or distress level is a 10, it's through the roof, you're just overwhelmed with something, you just are barely functioning. Or if your stress is at a 0, you're feeling totally content and at peace, you're open, you're able to listen. So to give your level of distress a number on a scale of 0 to 10. And I don't know if people want to put it in the chat or just write it down for themselves. But if you just kind of notice what your level of stress is in the moment, and this gives us a benchmark so that when I show you this technique and I take you through, you can know if you feel better. Oh, that's nice. I see. A 2. Okay. So even if you're at a very low level, a 2, there might be something there. So just notice if that 2, Lan, is, where you kind of feel it in your body. Is it in your stomach, in your shoulders, in your hands? Oh, Alexandra, 10. I'm glad you're here. So that would be the second question. So you check in on your level of stress, and we're doing this a little bit slowly. After this, you probably can do this in 2 or 3 minutes. And then just notice where it is in your body. And that helps you to locate it. Because what can often happen is after you reduce your distress, it almost as if like it wasn't there in the beginning. And people can kind of forget. So it's really nice to check in. Oh, that 8 was because my shoulders are so tense. And that tension can actually disappear. And when that level is gone, you can be aware that, oh, my stomach is actually hurt. So your distress could actually stay the same, but the specific thing that you're working on can reduce. So that's just one helpful thing to know. So your SUDS level, your 0 to 10, where it is in your body. So I'm going to show a technique, a psychosensory technique that I learned that is called havening. It has elements of EFT, emotional freedom technique, and EMDR, trauma healing technique. And it's very simple, which is why I thought it would be useful to introduce here. So what it does is if you just follow my actions. So we're going to just touch 3 places in our bodies in a very specific way. So this, you're just brushing your hands really gently in a rhythmic fashion. And when you're doing this technique, what you're wanting to do is to keep the motion continuous. And just notice what it feels like for you to rub your hands against each other. And what's happening in the brain when we do this sort of touch in these 3 different areas is your brain waves actually slow down to a sort of a normal alpha or faster brainwave to a delta. And that slow brainwave kind of signals safety to your brain, to your amygdala, which is really important. And you might notice as you're doing this, you relax a little bit or feel a little bit more comfortable, you might yawn, and that's all a part of the process. The second place that you touch with this process is your shoulders. If you just rub down from your shoulders to your elbows, only in one direction, really a gentle touch. In havening, some people call this the havening hug. And you're just continuing this rhythmic motion. Noticing what that feels like. Allowing yourself to take just a few deep breaths. Noticing your body settling. Noticing what's happening. And the last area of touch in this technique is your face. And if you are not comfortable touching your face for some reason, you can just stay with your arms. If you have glasses, you can remove them if it's comfortable. And then you just take tips of your fingers, putting it at the center of your forehead and just slowly brushing down. And then under your eyes and brushing down. And you're just imagining that the touch is just as gentle as if you were touching a newborn baby. There is no need to kind of get in there. It's that gentle touch that helps to slow down your brain waves, that helps to begin to signal safety in your body. I'm just going to do this for just a few more strokes. And that's taking 3 deep breaths, letting it out audibly. Sigh. And then you can let your hands rest. And if you have a glass of water nearby, I just invite you to take a sip of water. And then just take a moment to just check in with your body. And just notice if anything's changed, feel any differences. And then give your SUDS level, give your distress level on a scale of 10 to 0, a rating. Wow, 0. And if you put your initial number in the chat, it would be great if you put the new number in so that people can just see the shift. So one of the things that is just incredible about having techniques, and there are numerous techniques such as this. Let's see, now I'm a little curious. What are the new numbers? Wow, 10 to a 3. Oh, a mother's hug. So beautiful. But when you have this experience of being able to meet the stress and distress, to move towards it, to notice it, because you know that there are ways of helping you to feel better. You know, you don't feel defeated or overwhelmed or powerless in the face of intense emotion. It creates a sort of a sense of self-efficacy in your emotional navigation. And you only need 2 or 3 tools such as this to really make a powerful difference in your day-to-day life.
First, I love this activity. I love this activity. One question I have to ask you. We can't do that at work. What can you do? What kind of tip like this can we do if we're like in a very stressful meeting, maybe with our boss, and it's an uncomfortable conversation?
So you only have to, so what people with this technique, you can use all of them or you can use one of the motions. So under the table, under the table. So in one of the, just brushing your hands under the table, noticing what you're feeling, noticing where it is in your body, just being there, taking a couple breaths. And I think the power of this is the feeling that you can control your stress, that even if you can't contain it in the moment, you have a way of taking a coffee break, going to the bathroom, 3 to 5 minutes on your own, or a couple moments under the table, if you've really practiced the technique, that can get you out of fight or flight. So there are ways of, like you can do like a jaw drop technique that I often do that helps you to stimulate the vagus nerve. So it just like looks like you're doing a yawn. And when you stimulate the vagus nerve, that's just a way of telling your system that you actually are safe, to get you out of fight or flight. And even if you decrease your stress just a little bit, then, you know, your thinking brain can come back online, and you can help, and it can help you to navigate a situation way more effectively.
Can you demonstrate that? What that is? It just like a regular yawn?
Okay. So this is this technique comes, I think, and he may have used it elsewhere, but he may have taken it from somewhere, but I learned it from John Overdorf, who is an incredible hypnotherapist, NLP, a master trainer. He trained me in hypnosis. And anyway, so what you do is you can just open your mouth. You don't have to do this whole thing once you get the technique, and you can do it on your, you know, but if you practice this, you open your mouth wide to the point of discomfort. And then you relax your tongue and the back of your throat. Oh, that stimulates a yawn.
Mm.
And so usually in session, we'll do 3 complete yawns. And that just can kick your system out of fight or flight. I don't know if anybody sort of noticed what that was like. But just sitting here without doing the big motion, I can relax my tongue. And then yawn.
Yeah, Jennifer's saying it worked instantly for her, right?
That to me is what is so exciting from moving out of like the clinical work, where there's all of this intensity and people are just struggling so much, and realizing that these same tools for people who are functioning normally are essential, just essential to help people gain access to all of who they are. And so I forgot what you said in the beginning. I don't remember what phrase I used, that that distress is a
signpost, kind of like a sign, you know, like on the street, it's like stop or 10 miles. So you said that emotions are like signposts. So they're kind of directional.
yeah.
I thought that was the most powerful uh, analogy.
For me, when I was in my clinical training, they would, my supervisors would explain to me that when I see people and I could see their huge emotions and they're sort of overwhelmed, not to smile. But I knew when we got access to their emotions that and I knew that we had the skills to get underneath them and sort of open them up, that there is going to be something really beautiful.
Mm.
You know, I can even get emotional thinking about it, that they can connect to. So,
oh no, keep on going. Sorry.
so to be in a state of, you know, if you have like a client boss who sidelines them, and to not want to engage with them, to be in a state of despair, and to feel like that pit, feel deeply alone and be avoiding them. You know, it feels like a terrible thing. But if you're able to, instead of walking away from that feeling, if you can walk towards that feeling of despair and recognize that it is this signal, this signpost, that if you can sit with it, if you can decrease it, if you can move past it, that it can open you up to these pieces of yourself that you didn't even know were there, didn't even know were possible. So if I can just, time is passing so fast, but if I can just go on for one more.
Yes, please, please.
Okay, so, thinking about this client who, felt sidelined, felt, was avoiding their boss, and, just felt deeply uncomfortable in this work situation and despair. So first, you do the initial work of kind of what we do now, just what we call just dealing with the ambient distress. So just being stressed all the time. And so help people to have some tools to kind of lower that level. But when this woman was meeting that distress, she recognized that she'd had a lot of early experiences in her work with being ignored, being dismissed. And so when you begin to look at those and you can lower the distress and the emotionality and the hurt related to that, then beneath that, there was an early experience of moving at, I forget, like 9 or 10, and moving to a new school and feeling this deep sense of aloneness. And as we address, all within one session, as we address that aloneness, what that leads to is sort of a flourishing, a deeper engagement with people, with this boss, and a willingness to be curious and an ease and like looking and seeing that the boss didn't actually hate her, wasn't silent. They had very different working styles. And her sort of superpower was her ability to work with many different people and also to leverage her team's skills individually. And so she had that capacity to see what was her boss's superpower and to notice that and to notice what she could learn from him. And so it shifted the whole dynamic to she was figuring out, where do I need to grow? What can I learn from this person? And this became this exciting sort of adventure where she could barely function at work. So this despair and led to different things, but this despair was this signpost of something that she wasn't functioning at her optimal level at work. But if you can sort of follow the gravy train and touch on whatever these early hurts are, these difficult experiences, and kind of soothe that, then you can open yourself up in this really profound way. Anyway, that's a little bit deeper than stress reduction, but
it's so powerful, and it kind of makes me think of when I do training and development for companies, and we talk about emotions, one of the things the activity that I do is basically to name their emotions. So if they're feeling anger or sadness, and the purpose of it is to create as much space between the emotion and ourselves. Because I think sometimes, and you see this with kids too, right? I'm angry. And it's like this is me. I am angry. I am mad. I am upset. I am jealous. And when you identify the emotions by just naming it, anger, that's anger. You realize that you're putting as much space between you and the emotion. It's not you. And I think that's kind of the power of like these simple but powerful, rubbing your hands, feeling your face. You're really in the present moment. It's very powerful. So I want to open it up to questions for the folks who are in the live Zoom audience soon. But one more thing, that I had taken so many notes when I talked to you a month ago. And when we talked about negative emotion, you said the power of being able to manage your emotions. And you gave this example of a plank with a water filled with alligators. I thought it was brilliant. Tell the folks on this call what you meant by alligators and plank.
So I have to admit, I am from New Orleans. I'm a full Louisiana girl. So I talk about gators. Um, so one of the frameworks I like to use in my coaching practice that can be really helpful is if you can just imagine yourself, you have to cross sort of a bridge or walking across, but it's sort of a narrow plank. And underneath there is, big Louisiana swamp with lots of alligators. And if you are crossing this narrow plank, you're taking step after step, there's an extraordinary amount of stress. There is danger there. You could lose your balance. And it's just very hard to navigate. So if you can practice, and there's everyday tools, just mindfulness practices that you can Google, like self-hypnosis stuff that you can just engage in. There's so many tools. You have to find what works best for you. But if you engage in these practices, what you're doing basically is that you're widening the plank. So every time you do your havening or your meditation or your jaw drop, if you do this on a regular basis, what you're doing, kind of like prophylactically or brushing your teeth, is you're just widening that bridge so that if it's 12 feet wide on either side of you and there are gators underneath, you're not worried. You can function, something happens, someone talks to you, something doesn't go well, and you trip and fall, you can pick yourself back up. It is not devastating. It is not the end of your life. So that's the first way that some of these stress and distress management tools can help. And then the other ways, which I offer sort of in my practice, and some people can even do this work on their own, is that there are gators underneath, and you can use, some of these techniques to work with each gator, and like the big issues, the big fears, old patterns, and eliminate those so that whether or not something crazy happens and you jump in the water, that you're not going to get attacked. But you can do both. You don't need to resolve every deep hurt, every old pattern, every old relationship. You don't have to remove every gator in order to function. They're just things you can do, giving yourself 5-10 minutes a couple times a day to widen your plank so that you're building this resilience. So anyway, I get very excited about this stuff.
No. And what's so powerful about that is that we can't control the alligators in the swamp because there's always going to be stress. There's always going to be world calamities, elections, hateful people. But we can control our plank. We can control how we, our emotions, how we interpret situations. And I think that's the power of that plank analogy. When we widen the plank, there's more safety. If the plank is like this, and we look down and there's all these stressors, we're going to be like, I'm going to die. But if the plank is wider because we've built that emotional intelligence and the ability to kind of manage our stress, then there's more security in that. Okay, so first question out, Jason, my good friend Jason. Hey, Jason, and how is your beautiful wife doing? I hope she's doing well too. So Jason, if you want to unmute and ask your question, you can ask right here.
Great. Thank you so much, Lan. And Aisha, pleasure to meet you today. I wanted to thank you for these suggestions. I wanted to let you know that the facial technique was best for me, but I also wanted to let you know that when I took a leave of absence from Amazon, and it was an extended one due to my wife's health, I learned a lot of those emotional resilience techniques. And I just wanted to share with the group one that I had learned, and certainly would love for you to kind of add a little color. But okay, in an Amazon environment, you're in back-to-back meetings for several hours at a time. So I certainly wish that I could have been under the table with the hands. But something that I would do, though, is intentionally take 3 to 5 minutes to walk out of my building and start to surround myself and become present with nature, listen to the birds chirp, look at the trees, look at the colors, think about your connection with nature. And I was hoping you might psychologically help connect that for the rest of the group in terms of that technique that I learned from my therapist. And again, thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you, Jason, for introducing that and bringing that up. So one of the things that about taking a quick break and being outside in nature is that what it does is that if you are sort of mindful, if you are in the moment, if you are sort of engaged in the outside world, you're activating your sensory cortex. And so when you're activating your sensory cortex in your brain, which is sort of being present, so many studies have found that what that does is it kind of calms down the default mode network. So basically, overall, it gets you out of fight or flight. It tells your brain, it gives you an indicator of safety, but also what, experienced incredible meditators have is they have this sense of, of not being in this habitual negative critical thinking framework that is kind of quieted. But typically people, it's very difficult for them to, without a lot of practice, to quiet that critical mind, to quiet our active thinking. So the trick around that, instead of like being an incredible meditator and having a profound meditation practice, is activating your senses. So automatically when that comes online, then your default mode network sort of gets quieted. And so there's so many processes working. So then you're also just directly, you're kicking yourself out of fight or flight. And you're just signaling to your brain that you have a sense of safety. That is so important, so helpful. So
Awesome.
thank
And
you for introducing that.
we also have a question from Jennifer. Oh wait, let me spotlight you. Awesome. And if you want to just unmute and ask your question, Jennifer.
Oh, thanks, Lan. This is an incredible session, and I've recently started doing like health advocacy work with others. So I've been doing it for 10 years, but now I'm doing it more readily. And I was just wondering how you could interact with both patients and their families to introduce this, because I had a situation yesterday where the person became very upset. They had a setback, and it just became very emotional for everyone involved. And I was just wondering how you could like be with someone and use these techniques. Because obviously I can use it on myself, but how would it translate to others?
So one interesting thing, Jennifer, is that if you are doing some of these techniques with yourself because of mirror neurons, or if you are just breathing deeply or doing anything to calm yourself down, then that also, if someone's looking at you, can signal to them neurologically, can signal to their brain that it's safe and to calm down. But I just want to clarify, are you saying that, is that a setting that you would feel comfortable sharing some of these techniques with them?
So what I'm thinking is like, I try to remain obviously calm, right? In those situations when what I'll just call it is someone's becoming unraveled because they've had a setback, they're emotional. And I found that like my calmness doesn't necessarily translate to calming them down. So I was just curious if like I could, how would you introduce it? Like I can see that you're upset and I want to help you try to decelerate, or you know what I mean? Your emotions, or without saying it.
So if I can be perfectly frank, Jennifer, what I think the most beautiful thing that you can do if you have, if you feel calm and you're not stressed about it, is allowing them to unravel. You just give them to space, knowing that they're okay. It's okay for them to feel. It's okay for them to be in despair, and giving them that space warmly and that time to be there, because there are two things that happen with the emotions. One, we want to have practices for being able to down regulate our stress. But two, we want to know, and we want people to know that their emotions are okay to meet, so that it's okay to unravel, and that they're safe here. And that sort of grace is like, you just can't even downplay what that does for people.
You know what's so powerful about that, Aisha, is that I think about parenting and like my daughter. And I remember in the past, I would be like, oh, okay, stop crying. Okay, it's okay, it's okay. And I realized that it was actually kind of detrimental because I wasn't letting her show her emotions. And I was thinking about how I was brought up. Don't show, and once again, in the workforce, right? Don't show your emotions. It's emotions, bad emotions, like sadness. You got to hide that. And I think what I love about this, just your advice, was it's okay. Negative emotions aren't necessarily bad. They're telling you something. So last question. Is it Ali or Ali? You have the last question, and let me spotlight you.
Right.
And you can unmute and ask your question.
Oh, unmute.
Oh, yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, great. Okay. Thank you very much. So I think my question is kind of linked to what you're talking about there. So I'm imagining and semi-experiencing the situation where, having down regulated the stress and tension, as you talk about as you talked about the sort of potential underlying things that you haven't seen before, the gators that suddenly you see, oh, you recognize, oh, that's a gator. Is it okay? Would you say that that it's okay to then utilize these tools again to deal with or to help you cope with the emotions that the recognition of those gators then starts to to bring to the fore? From what you were just saying there, I'm expecting you to say no, face, just go ahead and feel the feelings. But that's a bit scary.
Totally agree.
So that is such an important question, Ali. So first, you get to do whatever you're comfortable with. You get to meet those feelings or not meet those feelings. However, whatever makes you feel safe, you can go get support for that. But the thing that to me is so important about the sort of alligator analogy is that once your bridge is, as you begin the daily practice and widening your bridge and just feeling better in the moment, you don't have to solve every single thing. So you reduce your level of stress, and then there's some sadness, you don't have to get to the root of that sadness and the root of that. And you can just notice that and just be in awe of yourself. And if it's bothering you later, you can give yourself 3 minutes to do some techniques to kind of take the edge off. Like just the basic structure of feeling your emotions and knowing that you can feel a little better is really useful. But the thing that Jason brought up, going outside, having an experience where you're in your senses and you feel alive, that also is healing, communicates to your brain that you do not need to stay in these chronic states of stress over and over. So there is the everyday resilience, there is the deep work, and then there's the Jason work, the generative work of having experiences that actually enrich your life and then contradict those old sort of stress responses. So there are a lot of ways around it.
I think we could literally have you for another like 2-3 hours. But I've put Aisha's website, aishawilliamsphd.com. Please go to her site if you want to reach out to her and try breakthrough therapy. I've gotten so much from this conversation, and I hope everyone on this call, from the comments in the live audience, it seems like everyone has been so impacted by your message. For the regulars on this call, you know what the deal is. please unmute yourself, put your video cameras on, and hold on, let me find this thing, view. Oh, there, gallery. If you can, I know a lot of people are off camera, but if you could turn on your camera for this one part, turn on your volumes, unmute yourself, because Dr. Aisha Williams deserves a big round of applause. Thank you, Dr. Aisha. This was so powerful, and amazing. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys for listening.
Amazing.